Joining us on the How Did You podcast today is Adam Sparrow. He's probably directed your favourite shows, and he's also started a course in something that I didn't expect. How are you doing today, Adam?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm not too bad, thank you. I alluded in the intro that you've done a course that I wouldn't have expected. What course was that? Because obviously throughout the pandemic it was rather difficult for us all. You said to me before this started that you thought you might have to retrain. What was it in?
So during the lockdown, all the work dried up as a freelancer. All the news work, everything became staff only, and even they were down to skeleton staff. So the freelance market just disappeared overnight. And I was watching the Joe Rogan podcast, in fact, and there was a guy in there called Jamie Metzel. He wrote a book called Hacking Darwin. I read that book and I was like, wow, this is literally the future of humanity. Like, we need to do something about this. And then when I had nothing to do, I signed up to a genomic medicine course at Cambridge as like an undergraduate certificate. And I started doing it. I did a couple of terms of it, and then the TV work came back with a vengeance. And it's sort of been shelved a little bit. I deferred for a year, and I'm just sort of muddling my way through it. I don't think I'm going to be changing career anytime soon now, but I learned a lot of really interesting things, and it was nice to dip my toe back into academia, because there's something about having to present yourself in a certain way and learn and reproduce works of that nature, which I think helps across everything, because we all have to write emails to people and we all have to make analyses and stuff like that. So yeah, no, it was very useful for many things. I don't think I'm going to be switching to careers anytime soon, though.
That was a time which I'm sure none of us want to live again. But if we had to go back further than that, what was life like as a child? Because did you always see yourself becoming a director of like Love Island USA, I'm a Celebrity, and things like that?
No, definitely not. No. Weirdly enough, I remember, for me personally, my first memory of producing anything creatively was on my SNES, if you know what that is, my old Nintendo console. There was a thing called Mario Paint. You ever heard of that? Yeah. Okay. So in Mario Paint, you could draw stuff, right? And then you could animate them. And every day I would come back from school. I don't know how, maybe 7 or 8 years old, something like that. And I would draw these fish and animate. And the thing you could do is make the tail waggle and then drag them across the screen. I made hundreds and hundreds of fish tanks and sharks and this and that and all that. So I spent a lot of time doing that. But there's a little bit in my family as well. My uncle was a director. He made films and documentaries, and he was fairly well renowned. He ended up being the head of script writing at Goldsmiths. And my cousin as well, he's an assistant director and a focus puller and a bit of a lighting director. And he's worked on all the James Bond movies and Harry Potter movies and stuff. So like they were down in, like, they all lived down in London, and I was up in the Midlands, and I used to sort of see them and think, oh wow, that would be cool. But I never really knew what I was going to do. I knew I wanted to do something, and then it just sort of, I can't remember what sort of happened, and I started writing scripts, I think, and I thought I was going to be a script writer, and then I went off to university. Actually, I went to go to Goldsmiths University. Not Goldsmiths, that's not true. South Bank University, to do script writing. And I went down there and I was like, this is a bit weird. I'm not really into this. And then next, I basically received an email from Ravensbourne just saying, do you want to come and have a look? And I went down to go and look at one course, which was moving image and sound design. And they met me and they talked to me. They were like, you need to go into the broadcast operations. So I went into their sort of open day. I was like, this is it. So I took a year out. I didn't go to South Bank, ended up going to Ravensbourne, and had a great time there. Like, there's a lot of kit. I ended up being the president of the student union there, and basically sort of not really doing much coursework, but instead just getting all the kit and going out and shooting stuff. It's pretty bad to admit that. That's not a particularly good thing to say to people, but that's what I did. Like a lot of me and my mates, we would just go, right, we'll go and shoot music videos, go and shoot this, go and shoot that. We just wanted our hands on the kit and doing stuff. So anyway, so I basically ran a bar and made loads of music videos. It was great at Ravensbourne. But yeah, that's sort of the bit up and towards the chunk of my life up and towards the bit where I got my first director's job anyway.
Once you've got the equipment, you just want to go out there and shoot because you feel like you can be free kind of thing. But with Cage Warriors, how did you make your way into that? Because on your LinkedIn, that started in 2016, and that was directing and then becoming an executive producer. Is that kind of a show that you grew up watching, or is that a show that you just managed to find an experience in?
Yeah, so that's a really weird one. So basically, if we just continue from what I said, I left university, I went to go and get, incidentally, not when we'd not finished my course, I got offered a job as a director at Endemol. I went to Endemol, did that for a couple of years, and then went did a bit of news. And then I really wanted to be. And at the time, I was a massive mixed martial arts fan. I'd been watching the UFC tapes. I've been watching, you know, when we were younger, we used to hand around VHSs of these fights. Going, have you seen this craziness? Have you seen this? And then we got older and stuff. And when I got to that age, I was like, I need to go see it. So I went to UFC 75, and I just totally fell in love with it. And I can send you the clip, but there's a clip of me basically at UFC 75 on my own. I paid for a Ticketmaster auction to get a cage side seat. Cost me like 400 quid to sit by myself because nobody would go with me. And Michael Bisping beat Matt Hamill. Very controversial decision, but he beat him still. Michael Bisping vaulted the cage in front of me, right? And I tapped the cameraman. There was like a camera in front of me. I tapped him on the shoulder. He swung round, and I went, and just screamed into the camera, and the director cut to me. So like I was the first cut after Michael Bisping's celebration shot at UFC 75, and I ended up in his highlight reel for about 5 years because it was like, and when he fought Matt Hamill, cut to a celebration, cut to me going crazy. I'll send you that clip. It's quite funny actually, but I use it as a GIF now when I'm sending people when I'm happy or whatever. But so that happened, and then I wanted to get into sports. At the time, I was working BBC Southeast News, and it was cool and stuff, and it was fine. But I always wanted to work. I wanted to work in mixed martial arts. That's it. That's all I wanted to do. And I thought, how can I do this? So I thought I need to get to Sky Sports. Now, I sent an email to a lady called Karen Wilmington saying she was the head of Sky Sports News. I said, I want to become a director. I'm a director at BBC Southeast News. This is my credentials. And she said to me, if you want to work in sport and for Sky, you can't just come in as a director. Nobody does. You have to do something else first. Here's Ben Burden's email. She sent me the email of the head of Vision Mixers. His name's Ben Burden. He then said, how you doing? I spent maybe a year sort of courting him, popping in to having a look at stuff, and the job came up. And at the same time, I'd just taken a job actually, so the chronology is a bit out of sync actually. So I was still working at Endemol when this bit was happening. And then I got a job at BBC Southeast as a sort of tech op senior tech op director type thing. And I'd been there 2 weeks. I told Ben, I was like, Ben, you know, I said I wanted to come and work for Sky, but I've just taken a job at BBC. At which point he said, I need you to come in and do an interview. And I was like, what do you mean? It's like, we have a job for a vision mixer in sport if you still want to do it. Anyway, so I go and I interview, and it went pretty well. And he offered me a job. So at this point, I've been at the BBC for like 2 weeks. And then I said to Ben, I was like, dude, like, I can't just hand my notes in straight away. I was like, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 2 months and then you can come to Sky. So we'll shelve this. The offer's there for 2 months and then you can come to Sky. So that's what I did. So I ended up working at BBC Southeast for like 2.5 months, always knowing that I was definitely going to leave. It was kind of weird. But yeah, anyways, then eventually went to Sky. I was a vision mixer there for like 2.5 years, nearly 3 years. And then the same woman, Karen Wilmington, I'd been vision mixing for her and a few others. A job came up for a director, and I just said, Karen, this is my story. I don't know if you remember, but I emailed you 3 years ago saying this, and you told me to go be a vision mixer, which I did. So now I'm here. I want to be a director. And she went, and they gave me the job, and that's it. And that's when I got my first Sky Sports director job. That was 11 years ago. And then, yeah, I spent my time just swimming around different sports and stuff. I did that for like 3.5 years. And then I went freelance, right? And this is where we get to Cage Warriors. I went freelance onto Big Brother, because the guy, the senior director of Big Brother, basically when Love Island started, all the Big Brother directors went off to Love Island because they were like, you know, they wanted to go and sit in the sun. So he had like 6 jobs going, and he just rang me up and said, mate, I'm desperate. What are you going to do? And I quit my job at Sky. Everybody thought it was bonkers. I went in and worked on Big Brother. And then, yeah, so that's how my reality thing started, was with that one moment leaving Sky to go to Big Brother. But then amongst that, you know, I started doing OB, started doing this, started doing that. And I started trying to put myself into every single genre of TV as much as I could. So I ended up doing reality, a little bit of sport, a little bit of news, a little bit of studio and all that sort of stuff. Then sort of, I can't remember exactly when, but one of the guys I was working with Big Brother said, you like cage fighting, don't you? And I was like, yeah, I do. And he was like, well, somebody's just messaged me asking me if I could go and direct a cage fight. Or he said something really clumsy like that. And I was like, yeah, go on then. He's like, but do you want to do it? And I said, well, Absolutely, that's literally, you know, like that's literally why I've done all of this is to work in mixed martial arts. Anyway, I ring this guy up, and I swear to God, like I'm mega confident. I don't know why I was just born like that. Maybe even my detriment. But I rang this guy up, and I had a panic attack. I was like freaking out. I was like, this is the moment I could fuck this up. And for the first time in my life, I was actually nervous. It was bizarre. Anyway, so I ring him up, and he's like, da, 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 and I give him my quote, my price, and I overpitch myself so brutally. And I think he just thought, I've got to have this guy because he's amazing. And then a guy called Gareth, he said, yeah, come down, come and direct Cage Warriors. And I walked in, and that was the first time, like you said. From then, that was for a company called Central Media, which is like a kind of small cottage one-man band type production company, but they did a good job. He was a very smart guy, very astute, he knew all the kit, and he let me come and direct it. And then that was it. From then on in, I think there's only 2 shows that have ever been directed by anybody else for the last 7 or 8 years. So yeah, that's it. So that was the first time I did that. And then yeah, weirdly enough, going back to lockdown, then I directed it for many years. I did lots of reality stuff as well. I did Big Brother, did Love Island, did One Born Every Minute, 24 Hours in A&E, all these different reality shows. Alongside, I'm always working with sports OBs and always working for Sky Sports News and whoever else will take me, really. And then lockdown happened and all that. And basically, I need to drink as well. Lockdown happened and Cage Warriors couldn't sell tickets anymore. So they couldn't, the budgets had to shrink basically, because obviously they get revenue from ticket sales, right? There were, at the time, the production company, there was one production company, which is the guy that gave me my first shot on Cage Warriors. They'd actually gone, another production company called Gravity Media had taken over, but I was kept on as the director of the show. And then Cage Warriors went to Gravity and said, you know, we need to do the same show but for less money. And Gravity obviously went, no, we can't. And then they said, well, we're going to have to do it in-house. And that's when I became the exec producer. And I was like, gee, what am I going to do? And we just had to beg, borrow and steal basically just to get the thing on air. So a lot of these fighters, I'm not trying to be conceited over, because Graham Boylan is enormously his people need to be grateful for Graham for this. But also as well, we as a production company, me and a few of my mates, so I went to some of my mates from Sky and blagged people into it who are a bit quiet and saying, can you work for cheap? And I basically cherry picked a bunch of people. I found a really sick editor from Sky Sports, a cameraman from Sky Sports, and and we just mackled together a little team. I actually went and got a bounce back loan, bought a load of kit with that because of COVID, right? And then mackled together this thing. And then we managed to convince an OB company to do it, called Televideo. And they said, yeah, we'll do it on the cheap as well, just to like get it going. And we kept the light on. You know, we made Cage Warriors for next to nothing because there just wasn't the budget. And, you know, the first few were a little bit ropey because we were just putting it together. And then since then, we've gone on leaps and bounds, and you know, not to be immodest, but Cage Warriors looks better than it's ever looked. And I know that as a fan, not just as a person that makes it. Like, we now have, when I started on it in what did it say, 2014, 15, whatever it was.
It says 15 on your LinkedIn.
2015. When I started in 2015, there was like maybe 6 cameras, 5, 6 cameras in the back of a transit van. Now we have, well, the show we just did, Cage Warriors 134, we had 13 cameras, and that included 2 super slow Hymo Eng cameras, as well as 1 super slow camera on the cage, 4 cage cameras, mini cameras on the coaches, mini cameras on the backstage. Normally as well, and that was, we restricted that down. We would normally have a jib and a steady cam as well. So we'd normally have 15 cameras, and now we're partnered with NEP, which is the largest OB company in the world. So like what Cage Warriors started at when I started and what it is now, a lot of that's to do with the vision and the ambition of Graham Boylan, definitely, but I'm along there with him. You know what I mean? Every time Graham wants it to grow, I'm there to help it grow. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, and that's Cage Warriors. But like alongside that, I've done, I directed Bellator a few times as well. They are a direct competitor, so now it's not really the right etiquette to do it, because before I was just like a freelance director and I could do these sorts of things. But now, you know, my in the mixed martial arts sphere anyway, it's very much I am the director and producer of Cage Warriors, so it's not really I don't really want Bellator to do well, if I'm honest, because it's sort of my direct competition in the UK. But yeah, and also as well, I work on a show called Karate Combat as well. Do you know? You ever heard of Karate Combat? It's a very emerging thing. They've just landed a large, I'm not going to say the number, a large crypto sponsorship deal, because I let them release that. And yeah, that's really a crazy emerging sport, which is basically just like mixed martial arts, I suppose, but it's just karate. So there's that. I'm helping them with that. I'm the series producer of that show, and I also make a thing called Polaris as well, which is like I'm sort of the director producer type for one of the largest Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament in the UK. So that little production company that was born out of lockdown is sort of slowly branching into these little things. And, you know, we've got a few other things on the table as well, pitches out there. I can't really talk about them too much, but we've got pitches out there for mixed martial arts shows, like magazine shows and reality shows as well. That's the big one. I don't want to push that, but that's the big one, is we have actually got a pitch for a mixed martial arts based reality show on the table of a few places, but I can't, you know, I don't want to dream too big, because that would be insane. That would be nuts. But yeah, that's where the Cage Warriors thing happened, and that's where I'm at now. So it started off with little old me at UFC 75 screaming down a camera like some crazy fan wearing a Chuck Liddell t-shirt, giving it all this, you know, whatever it was. 14 years later and no hair, I'm now in the place I set out to be, and that's it. That's actually the truth of the matter, you know. Like, this is literally what I set out to do, and I did it. So yeah, that's that. Along the way, I've had to do loads of stuff I didn't want to do, to be fair, but there we go.
You've also done so much more on your LinkedIn. Like you say, for 3 months you were studio director at Good Morning Britain. You've also worked on I'm a Celebrity since 2019, and you've worked on Ready to Mingle. How does it feel to be working on like the kind of well-known shows of ITV, as well as doing all this different stuff that's been born out of lockdown?
Yeah, no, that was definitely, as soon as you get into the market. So the mixed martial arts thing is always my passion. That's what I did, and I find it it's really hard to explain to people sometimes when they're like, but you do I'm a Celeb, like why would you choose mixed martial arts over I'm a Celeb? And I just, like, you know, I stay true to, you know, I don't come from much, so I don't really care for the competitive nature of what other people think, if you know what I mean. I can care what I think about myself, you know. So, you know, I when I went into the market of the reality sphere, started in Big Brother, and Big Brother was savage. Like, it's coming back now on ITV, and I don't even dare ask any of my mates if they've had the call yet, because like it was so much fun. It was so much fun. It was really good, and everybody, and it's harsh to say this, but it's true, but any good reality director and producer for that matter I've ever met cut their teeth on Big Brother, because it was brutal. Because you were there 8 hours, 2 hours on, 1 hour off, 2 hours on, 1 hour off, and it was just constant reality content, just dragging it. You know, with all due respect, Love Island now is not like that. Love Island there is a format to it. You know, it's still all reality, but they go off and have a date. You know what I mean? And that feels apart. Or like I'm a Celeb, they go and have a trial, they go and have a challenge. You know, so the reality content is much lower. But Big Brother wasn't like that. It was 47 minutes of pure reality, and there was very little interaction with the housemates. So it was all just 47 minutes of organic reality. Is absolutely brutal. Like, it's very difficult. And we all did it, and we all sat there and grinded it out, and, you know, sit in that freezing cold container at Elstree Studios. You know, I think everybody earned their stripes in that little hut. So yeah, anyway, nowadays everybody gets to fly around the world and do these Netflix shows and this and that, and some of my good mates are like now series directors and senior directors and stuff on all these big shows, and it's cool. But I remember we were all sat in that, you know, everybody came through that horrible little freezing cold. Well, it was, to be fair, it was only freezing cold for the winter celebrity version, but yeah, in Big Brother. But yeah, but yeah, no, but like I'm a Celeb and all that, it was just a natural progression of keep trying to move up the ladder, and you know, it was cool. I love being senior director on I'm a Celeb was probably the biggest accolade of my entire career. You know, if you think about it, like I had to completely design the camera plan and organize the team for what was somewhat of a makeshift production on what is the biggest show on TV. You know, like X Factor is pretty massive, but it lasts much longer. If you look at the actual viewing figures for 2020, anyway, we got 14 million viewers, which was the most watched television program outside of Boris's COVID lockdown speech. You know, this, that's what I'm saying. So like, but we did that on a wing and a prayer, because we just, you know, we were just putting it together. And, you know, some of the people who work on that show, they are the best in the world. Like, and it's not even like sycophantic to say that. Like, if it wasn't, we would have failed. Like, it was crazy long days, working all night, you know, everybody just head down. And yeah, it was crazy. But yeah, that was kind of, I'd say that's the biggest achievement, because it was such an enormous show and we got it done, you know. And that's testament to people like Chris Power, who's the series director, who was my boss, who's incredible, Ollie Nash, who's the exec producer, and a good friend of mine who incidentally also worked with on Ready to Mingle, which is Laura Wolf. Just, you know, just next level people who make stuff like that happen. And I learned so much from all of those. As I sort of move now slightly further away from reality, I think, and I'm trying to focus more on maybe taking some of the lessons I've learned and bringing them into the severe, which was where my expertise is, which is organized violence.
You must have had some crazy experiences throughout your, whether it be directing, executive producing, or just being on, say, a show floor. And I want to know, what is the craziest experience you've ever had? Would it be like, say, working on I'm a Celebrity when that massive storm hit, or would it be something that's happened at Cage Warriors that you least expected? Because, like you say, it's organised violence, or is it something on Big Brother back in the trenches?
Well, the one that springs to mind is what, weirdly enough, Cage Warriors, touch wood, looks like it should be the most chaos, but actually is the most organized thing of all those things, because it's very clear and defined what's happening. Two people come out, they fight, there's rules, there's a ref, they go home, there's somebody wins, somebody loses. It's like those parameters are quite set. There's a format to it all. And the guys that do it, from Graham Boyle and Ian Dean and all the rest of the Cage Warriors team, are just so steeped in this format of how to get it done. And like all the people I introduced into it as well now are all very very well organized and know exactly what goes on. I'd say one of the craziest things was on Big Brother, when David Bowie died. Unfortunately, I worked on the Celebrity Big Brother episode where Angie Bowie went in. And Angie Bowie, for whatever reason that she was put into there, and you know, that we heard one morning the unfortunate news that David Bowie had died, right? There's me and a good friend of mine who's probably the best reality director in the world, in my opinion, called Alex Scott. He was sat next to me, and then multi-stream reality directing, you have, because you're trying to cover as many things as possible, you have two directors who are working in tandem, stream A and stream B, right? That's how it works. And then you have multiple ISOs, which are like record feeds, if you will. So we're sort of recording 8 things at once, but there's like 100 and something cameras. So it's not like, you know, you're sort of selecting where to take it anyway. So on A streams, that's him following a story, he's following like Darren Day and some stuff like that, and I get told on B, let's follow Angie to the diary room. And I'm like, okay, cool. She goes into the diary room, and like there's a lady called Tiff who was outside. I remember this vividly. And I'm following Tiff, and I'm waiting for Angie to come out, and they tell Angie, and Angie comes out and just opens the door and goes, looks at Tiff, and she's like, what's wrong? So they sit down on the sofa. I get my 2 singles and a 2 shot. As you all see in reality, that's the golden ratio. It's the 2 singles and a 2 shot. I'm like, I've made it here, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, Angie goes, David's dead. And Tiff goes, what? Because the unbeknownst in that moment was that David Guest was asleep in bed, right? Still, you know about this story. You've seen this, yeah. So, and Angie goes, so then Angie goes, David's dead. Tiff just goes mental, and she just goes nuts. You've seen it, yeah? You've seen it. Yeah. She's like, oh my God, David's dead. And she's like really overreacting American reality type of performance. And then we're like, and I look at Alex, I'm like, I don't know what's going on here, mate. And Alex listens into my stream. He's like, I don't know either. And I turn around and go, what can somebody help? And the producer's like, and there was just this one moment, and it was weird the way that the room collectively went, oh shit, she thinks it's David Guest. And anyway, so like it's sort of, it happens so fast. It looks quite labored in the edit, but like we actually cut on fairly quickly. But there was a period of time where we were like, what the what is actually going on here? And then they go into David's bed and they open the quilt and he goes, and he opens his eyes and they script. It's just one of the greatest bits of telly I've ever seen. And it all happened completely by accident. Like none of that was planned at all. Like that just that felt like I can swear, I can vouch 100%. Nobody produced that. Nobody coerced that. That was pure reality. Somebody got the wrong end of the stick, which created this crazy commotion. Probably one of the funniest reality TV moments I think of all time, and it happened just completely organically. But yeah, that's probably one of them. You know, we've had lots of other stuff like weather and snow and this and that, and you know, all sorts of other mad things. But yeah, I think that's it. But normally it's in reality shows the mad things happen, because obviously, as you said, I'm a celeb. That was tough. That was tough when the roof came down, and you know we were to be evacuated and all that. That was that was tough. But it was dealt with really professionally, and you know, in those sorts of situations, the production, you know, ITV and Lifted, who do it for them, it was all so well managed with health and safety. You know, it was super cautious. So we just got out there super early and, you know, just abandoned ship because you had no idea. And they were right to do that, because then the roof came off. So, and we were all going, no, do we need to be sure about this? We want to shoot this thing. They were like, no, you need to get out right now. We left, and then it wasn't, but 2 hours later, we're like, oh no, the roof's gone. So yeah, they absolutely nailed that, to be fair. And I could just go in the reality shows and stuff. There's always, especially I'm a celeb, so many bonkers little moments and stuff. Like I could go on for ages, but it'd be just bore you. But like, yeah, it's an interesting world, reality. You know, sports is cool too. Like I've seen some crazy sporting things happen too. But yeah, anyway, yeah.
You're now known as a TV director, and you've worked your way up through the ranks, like you say, through the trenches and everything like that. So, as you're known in the industry, do you think we could ever see you on I'm a Celeb? Do you think we could have you sat down, do a trial? And if so, which one would you agree to, and which one would you absolutely not touch?
So, full disclosure, I think this is common information, so I don't feel like I'm betraying any NDAs or anything like that. But all of those trials have been done by producers before anybody else does them. You would have to, because we have no idea if they work. So and even the Cyclone, there's kind of a thing where various members of, sometimes very senior production, go and do the Cyclone just to test it, to make sure it works. And we rehearse the cameras and all that sort of stuff. And Paul Newton, who's the trials series director, he wants to see everything, you know, so he needs to see it once. So almost all of the trials are rehearsed beforehand with producers. So if I go back in November, I might see if I can do that, get on the Cyclone. But yeah, I wouldn't mind, but it wouldn't be on telly. I'm not famous enough to be on telly, but yeah, no, it's just the celebrities do that shit. But yeah, I think, yeah, I'd like to do some of the trials, but I'd only do them to rehearse them, obviously.
Because of how much work actually goes into media productions and TV shows and everything like that, what do you believe personally that is something that is most undervalued, sorry?
Yeah, I always think, and somebody told me this early on in my career, like you have to always respect the runners. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's one thing that some people don't do, and you should do. And that's because you're a runner one day, 2 years later, they could be a serious producer. They could be this 5 years later, they're the exec producer, you know, like, and I think there's a weird, it's even kind of weird. Like, you don't get that in other things. You know what I mean? If you want to be a doctor, you don't go and make tea for the other doctors for 2 years to learn to be a doctor. Do you know what I'm saying? Because you obviously go, yeah, I suppose that's more formally educated, but I can't think of any other thing other than the creative arts where there's this sort of like weird slave labor job, right? And I remember when I was at Ravensbourne, I did work experience in my first year, and then in the second year you have to like present to the first years, right? And I said something which went down like a lead balloon a little bit with the lecturers, is that if you're going to go somewhere, and this was during the early days of Big Brother, and everybody wanted to get on Big Brother, but on Big Brother you were just like ironing Davina McCall's clothes and, you know, just doing real menial shit. And I just said, if you're going to be a runner, don't ever give your time up for free. make sure you are learning something. And if you don't learn something and you keep going back, come and speak to somebody, because that's not on. Like, you shouldn't just be there to do menial shit unless you're exchanging it for access to knowledge and information you would not otherwise have access to, right? And that they were like, oh, shut the fuck up, get him out. Like, the big hook came out, dragged me out, because it's not like the etiquette to do that. But like, I think that's super important. I think that you shouldn't just the question was what's undervalued, and I think that level of person, if you know what I mean, who are just new in the industry and all that sort of stuff. I've tried it with my little production company where I brought some work experience on. Some of it worked out, some of it didn't. But when they weren't paid, or they were paid very little, I was always like, what have you learned? What have you done today? And some of them got to come in as never really working on TV before, and they cut their own packages. And then some of the VTs you saw on Cage Warriors were actually shot and edited by people who were considered, juniors, or even at that time sort of work experience, because I just wanted them to learn something. I wanted them to do that. And incidentally, weirdly enough, what that does, which I found anyway, is that then opens up the door to the two very distinct types of people. If you say, right, you're here as work experience, you're not getting paid sod all, but I want you to learn something. What do you want to know? And some people bite your arm off and say, right, what do you want? I want to do this. I'm like, go and pick up the camera, go and do this, go and shoot this, do that. And other people just sit there on Instagram and think, well, I'm not getting paid, so I'm not going to do sod all. And that's really interesting to me. There's two very distinct types of people. And I didn't know anything about that. I just thought everybody was like me, and they were just like super keen and wanted to know everything and just irritating like me, but they're not. And that's quite a bit an eye opener. Is the sort of diatribe, not diatribe, the sort of what's the word I'm looking for? The different sort of mindsets of people who come from those sorts of ways of thinking. But anyway, so that's it. Yeah, so I think the runners and stuff, like the people when they're first starting out, they're not utilized enough. You can trust, respect, people have got mad skills and they're really like young and they're full of energy and they don't have kids at home. I've got 3 kids now, I'm knackered all the time, like when I'm doing 16 hours a day, it's killing me. Like, if you're younger, you need to be the one there, giving people the opportunity to push themselves, giving people the opportunity to have access to kit, a bit like Ravensbourne, right? To touch the kit, use it, shoot stuff, mess it up, do stuff wrong, make mistakes. If you're not allowed to do that, you never learn.
You mentioned your own production company. That is a kind of recent thing. What made you start your own production company? Was it to give the opportunity to new people, like you say, or was it because it was needed for Cage Warriors, for example?
Weirdly enough, like, it's actually become a production company now, but like for the first year it wasn't. It was nothing. It was just me and my mates just trying to keep Cage Warriors afloat, and it slowly evolved into something, and then it became something after a while. Like, in the beginning it was just me and who was the operations manager, the COO of Cage Warriors, called Harry Fitzgerald at the time, just trying to keep Cage Warriors on air and still give the opportunity for fighters to fight. Because like, say, like Paddy, for instance, Paddy the Baddy, one of the most famous fighters in the world, most people in the world now, he was able to come to Cage Warriors and he fought 3 times during lockdown. None of that would have happened if we hadn't kept the lights on. And we were all working for next to no money. Most of the time working for no money, just trying to make it happen, you know what I mean? So that was the early days. But then this production company is sort of sprouting out into something more, but I'm not gonna, I like having my hands on the kit and I like doing stuff, and that's not a particularly scalable business model, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm at the point now where I'm like, well, what am I doing here? What am I going to go full time with the production company? I'm going to give up these other things. I'm going to do this, going to do that, get a full time job, whatever. So there's a few opportunities at foot, but I think I'm just going to leave the production company as like a little slow burner. I think that's the way to do it. I think if I try and plunge in with both feet now, it won't serve me in the long run, I don't think.
What is the one bit of advice that you've received or that you live by that you'd like to share with others?
Well, no, it's something that sounds a bit arrogant, but like something I taught myself just through analysis, anecdotal analysis, right? Is the one denominating factor for success is not money, intelligence, opportunity even. That sounds like a weird thing to say. It is just hard work. And I say that because during lockdown, I didn't have any work. I was sat there doing sod all, and I didn't know what to do. And I was like, I can't not work. Like, I've got like ADHD here, right? I can't, like, genuinely, like, I can't sit around doing nothing all day, doing my head in. So I rang one of my friends, and I ended up working at an Amazon warehouse, right? And I was doing 10 hours a night for not much, well, relative to what I normally earn in TV, not as much, you know, a very different wage to what I would normally earn in TV, throwing parcels into little shelves and pushing trolleys around. And, you know, I was so keen and so helpful. They basically made me the pallet guy. So I was pushing pallets and sweeping floors at an Amazon warehouse, you know, 4 days a week. And I did that. So actually, I did loads of days. No, I think I ended up doing 17 days doing that. Right. And that was just pure graft. And I was like, you know, during that time, the bounce back loan came through, and I carried on working. I know I had all this money in my account ready to do this, set up this production company. And that hard work, even though it had nothing to do with TV, has paid off for me exponentially. Because since then, strangely enough, the greatest opportunities in my career have come about. So I don't know, you know, I want to be too like woo-woo about it, but like there is something about genuine hard work, as much, no matter what you're doing, will always somehow karmically or whatever pay off in the long run. You know, if you're not up for the graft, you're not, you know, you might get some short-term gain. You might get somebody give you an opportunity because they think they like the look of you, or you've said the right thing or something like that. But if you want to make a long-term impression or a long-term success, you just got to graft. And it's relentless. It's now like I just did like 3 16-hour days in a row, and then, you know, finished that and came home, and I had to completely do loads of stuff at home as well, you know, like loads, you know, start do a 10-hour day in my own house. Do you know what I mean? That's just what it is, you know, because I'm hardly ever here, so I've got like 1,000 things to do when I actually have a day off, you know. So yeah, it's just pure graft. That's it. And I tell you what the other thing is, and it's like I'm tacking this onto the graft thing, is like do the graft with a smile on your face. Like, don't ever moan or complain about your opportunity to work hard, because if somebody took that away from you, you'd be miserable. So therefore, the logic is, if you're miserable not doing anything, if you're doing something, you should be happy, no matter what it is.